A very warm welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us on this edition of K24 Inside Business, the last word in business. My name is Sarah Adam. Later in the hour, we'll have a discussion that will focus on the export market. How can farmers access this particular market? Now we'll have that discussion later in the hour. But for now, let's take a look at what is making headlines in the world of business. Increased duty by 21% on beverages. US slabs sanctions on Iran's central bank, threatening Kenya's tea. And wheat farmers resort to lending as central bank moves to phase out the old 1,000 notes. Now to our top business story of the hour. The Ministry of Lands and Housing has embarked on digitizing all lands registry records for ease of transaction across the country. According to the ministry's Chief Administrative Secretary Gideon Mungaro, Nairobi and other neighboring counties are already digitized. Linda Kosgei tells us more.
It is now possible for people to conduct a land search online in Nairobi, thus limiting the time one would have used to have the same done manually. This is after the Ministry of Lands and Housing announced plans to digitize all lands registry records. The Ministry of Lands and Housing Chief Administrative Secretary Gideon Mungaro said there is need to limit the interactions of land officials with clients as much as possible to limit cases of corruption.
Kufikia sasa, kabla tuende digitali, tunaweza kutayarisha usajili wa hati miliki kwa siku 12. Kutoka siku 73. Kwa hivyo hii ni mabadiliko makubwa sana kwa wizara. Wafanyaji kazi pia wameanza kubadilisha tabia. Najua mnatujua kama wizara ya ardhi ambayo tunajulikana tu na kazi moja, ufisadi.
The CS added that the government was in talks with the East African Union to extend the donation of the equipment to all county lands registries to ease in mapping and documentation of parcels of land.
New system by the end of March, when we've got it in place, all of those land registry documents will be digitized, and effectively at the press of a button, somebody will be able to establish who owns the land. Now just think for one moment what impact that will have on the efficiency of the Kenyan judiciary.
The equipments included computers equipped with global positioning system, a server, a container for record storage, and a phone tablet for field officers carrying out the mapping. He further said that the ministry had embarked on sensitizing people on community land rights ahead of the digitization exercise to avoid tussles emanating on communally owned parcels of land. Laikipia Governor Nderitu Murithi held the GIS and agricultural equipment, saying they would go a long way in assisting in mapping of land and proper planning of urban areas in the region. The GIS equipment would help in resolving the numerous land disputes in the country. Linda Kosgei, K24 Business.
Moving on, global tea production from 2018 was estimated at 5.85 billion kilos, up from 5.8 billion kilos in 2017, which was a 0.68% increase according to the East African Trade Association. The productivity was driven by good weather and improved husbandry, with Kenyan farmers urged to diversify to specialty teas, which fetch better prices. Marcy Milanoi tells us more.
It has been quite an insightful morning where we have seen IATA giving us the key performance of the tea industry, not only in Kenya but also globally, keeping in mind that the sector has been facing quite a bit of challenges. But of course, the country is quite optimistic that the production and also trade volumes will also increase. Now, to give us more details, I'm now joined by Mr. Mudiba from IATA. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
Briefly, you can just give us an outlook as far as tea performance is concerned.
Yeah, at the moment we are in terms of productions been increasing over the past few years. We may say from 350 million kilograms in 2012 to the current 490 million kilograms. In terms of average prices, they've generally stagnated, but over the past 1 year, there's been a general decline in the prices of tea, and also lower returns to the farmers and the investors in the tea sector. Essentially, it's twofold. One is due to the increased volumes of tea. The higher the supply with the stagnant demand, the prices will either stagnate or come down. Two has been external factors which are beyond our control, and that's because we have the key countries that consume the Kenyan and African teas having challenges, namely Pakistan, where devaluation took place. We have Egypt, where dollars have been a strain. Sudan has also had its share of challenges because of leadership and then declining dollar availability. We move on to the UK. We have also matters to do with Brexit.
Kenyan farmers have been urged to venture into the specialty teas. How are they performing in the global market? Is it a market that you can take a look at?
Indeed, Kenya is not an exception. We must diversify from the black CTC teas to orthodox teas. We have purple tea, and we also need to repackage ourselves. We need to deliberately, constantly be able to market our teas as Kenyan tea for Kenya, African teas for the other respective countries like Tanzania, Uganda, Malawi, and so on and so forth. That is something we are lacking. If you look at Sri Lanka, they are proud to talk about Ceylon tea, so that anyone going out there knows they're buying Ceylon tea, different. Most of our teas is sold in bulk, bought at the auction, but when it goes out there, it's not recognized as Kenyan tea. So we are losing out in a big way. Indeed, we get the returns, but we've lost our brand. So we need to start working on our brand as Kenyan tea, in the case of Kenya. Our brand as Rwandan tea, our brand as Ugandan tea. Then that way, there could be those peculiar tastes which the various consumers prefer. So it is something we need to work on, and that indeed will help us be able to be recognized for the good quality teas that we have. Rwandan tea, for example, this week and over the past 2-3 weeks, has been fetching, some of the teas have been fetching for up to $6.30 per kilogram, whereas some in the auction have been fetching for as little as $1.
Maybe you can tell us about the Tea Act and what it means for the tea sector.
Indeed, the Tea Act is timely. It has come in at the best time. We're discussing the bill, which we believe and request Parliament to fast track so that it becomes law. The significance of it is that it will remove the tea sector from the Agriculture and Food Authority. It will graduate from a department to an entity with legal status and able to run its activities. And that is what it was. Tea Board of Kenya was a brand and should continue to be a brand of Kenyan teas. When we get into our directorate, we lost it all. Issues to do with the appropriate supervision have declined. Issues to do with the steadfastness of the sector has also declined. All the personnel who have been in the tea directorate have been on acting capacity. You can't keep people acting for 5 years and treat it as normal. They cannot make sober decisions for the tea sector. So we are for the legislation being brought into being so that it removes tea from the wider Agriculture and Food Authority. We need to have a board that is properly constituted, having various key players like KTDA, KTGA, EATTA. Of course, we have also provided that there should be also the Council of Governors represented. In terms of numbers, we would like it to be both private and government sector well represented in that board.
Thank you so much for speaking to us. We were speaking to Mr. Mudibo from IATA, who was giving us the overall performance of the tea sector and also what the Tea Act will mean for the tea industry. And of course, this is in line to boosting the industry and of course ensuring that the Kenyan tea performs well and also performs well in not only the global markets but also locally and of course to increase local and international consumption. We'll be here to give you more details, but for now, my name is Mercy Milanoi for Inside Business.
Now moving on, Copper Oil Refineries threatens to shift their investment to another country if the company will keep on being blamed for the polluting of environment. This comes after Machakos County Assembly Committee on Environment had gone to the River Athi to establish the source of the pollution. The committee, chaired by Athi River Township Member of County Assembly Robert Kisini, visited several spots of the river after its water turned green in color with foul smell. Jimmy Mbogo tells us more.
The main sewer line leading through the slum of the industrial town had blocked, bursting its breath of untreated human and company waste through the drainage line made for stormwater and flows into the river, which forced the residents to voice their concern to the government to crack the whip on polluters, since the river is the main source of water for the areas downstream. However, according to the company's head of operation, Anisha, the National Environment Management is the one to blame for not playing their part in cleaning the environment even after receiving 500,000 shillings every month. Mr. Shah proposed for the government to do a proper investigation on the institution and other organizations which are polluting into the environment, since the company disposes their waste directly to the sewer and not to the environment. He, however, added that a task force should be formed in order to investigate the matter carefully and release a report which organizations are actually polluting the environment.
I think there's a misconception in terms of which companies are actually and which institutions are actually involved in polluting the environment. It's a health risk to all of us, including ourselves who work here day in, day out.
According to the MCAs, the Copper Oil Company is among those that are polluting the environment after their main sewer line had blocked near Bamburi Cement in Athi River, spilling polluted water to the River Athi. Jimmy Mbogo, Inside Business.
Moving on, residents from Kirumbi, Gimba, Bololo, Bura, Kishushe and other villages in Taita Taveta County are facing starvation after lack of poor rainfall experienced in that region. Most of the population in Taita Taveta County depends on agriculture, where they do both commercial and subsistence. Currently, farmers are preparing their farms hoping to harvest enough to sustain themselves. Jasmine Wambui tells us more.
Robinson Kichengela from Kirumbi village in Voi has been cultivating on his farm for over 30 years, but he hasn't managed to harvest enough due to poor rainfall and human-wildlife conflict. For Robinson, a father of 5, life hasn't been soft for his family, as in most cases they have only one meal a day. Despite experiencing poor rainfall, he hasn't given up on his farm, but hopefully prepares for the next rainy season.
Msimu huu mdogo, sengine unapata, sengine unakosa. Hivyo nakuta sasa huu kilimo kidogo unapanda mbaazi, pojo, kunde na mahindi kidogo sababu unabahatisha.
Elsewhere, Emily Wakesho's biggest worry is lack of enough harvest, despite spending a lot of money in buying seeds and spending most of her time preparing the farm.
Ngoje shamba ni likubwa na unyonge wa mwili pia. Siangalii huo unyonge wa mwili nikijua kwamba kuna watoto kunitegemea mpaka ninge shambani nijibidishe namna hiyo.
The narrative was the same for other farmers like Alice Malemba, who also complained over starvation, saying her last harvest was in 2008.
Wengine unashinda na njaa. Ukinywa chai ni basi mpaka jioni. Utakuja pata hiyo pakiti ya unga ama kilo unga. Mahindi yenyewe imepanda. Kilo sahihi ni 45.
According to weather reports, the county director of the Meteorological Department, Robinson Asira, said the farmers from Taita Taveta County will have to brace themselves for hard times, as a short rainfall will be inadequate to sustain maize crops.
Okay, kwa vile mvua yenyewe itanyesha kwa muda mfupi sana, kwa sababu ikiwa itaanza mapema na ishe wiki ya 4 ya mwezi wa 12, basi hapo tunaona ya kwamba mvua itapokelewa kwa muda wa 9 weeks. Lakini ikiwa itachelewa kuanza na ishe mapema, basi itanyesha kwa majuma 7 peke yake.
The Meteorological Department have been advising farmers to consider planting drought-resistant variety crops which can sustain rainfall under 200 millimeters. Jasmine Wambui, K24 Inside Business.
Now, today's discussion will focus on export market. Now, horticulture farmers risk losing a significant portion of their 113 billion annual earnings if a petition to ban harmful pesticide is passed in Parliament. Now, the petition seeking to outlaw use of some harmful pesticide could have adverse effects on the quality and quantity of the country's exports. Joining us to discuss this is Okisigera Ojepat, who is the CEO of Fresh Produce Consortium of Kenya. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you.
What can farmers do to ensure that their produce can be of quality and can be exported? Because the challenges that farmers are facing right now is the pesticide they're using is not acceptable in international market.
Thank you, Sarah, for having me. I need to make it clear that this country has rules. This country has regulations. This country has the best regulated systems on pesticides around the region. So I disagree that we are using banned pesticides. However, we could be having a few pesticides coming in from the porous borders, but as a country, we have pesticides that are regulated. What is important is not about the pesticide ban, it's about the responsible use of pesticide that is important. A case study here is that if you're supposed to take a specific dose and spray a pesticide today, stay for 3 days before you harvest, you need to adhere by the set standards. But if you spray it today and you harvest it tomorrow, definitely you'll have residue on our products. So I do not advocate a scenario where we're talking about banning of pesticides. I advocate a position of us having a responsible use of the pesticide that have been accepted and listed in this country.
All right. In terms of sensitization to farmers, are you doing enough to sensitize farmers on what to use and the quality measures that they need to take up to ensure that actually their produce can be accepted?
Sarah, for those who are doing export-oriented products, there is a clear guideline of the pesticide that you must use on a specific product for specific markets. And if you do not adhere to it, there are consequences. Consequences is that when we take our products into the marketplace, they are sampled and taken to the lab. And therefore, if there's any residue, excess residue that is detected, that specific exporter is punished. And that exporter then has a traceability system that is able to trace back the product up to the grower. But of course, at the point of interception in the marketplace, Kenyan's image in terms of our name is tainted because one exceedance was found. But that does not mean that we do not have guidance. In terms of sensitizing the domestic market players, we are far way below. And this we need to work together to ensure that the same growers who grow for export are also growing for the domestic market. So there's a lot that needs to be done there that does not require us alone, but it requires a concerted effort by all agencies, both from the private and the public sector, to ensure that this goes on. And this is where media comes in helping us to unpackage the real information that needs to go out there.
All right. And when we talk about food regulations, we've seen failures. We have from aflatoxin in maize, poor quality cooking oil, pesticide residue in fruits and vegetables, which you have mentioned. How can we ensure that we do not have certain products in the market, even for just local consumption, regardless even if it's going to be for export markets? We
need to do surveillance and we need to do enforcement. The regulations are here. It's about whether we're enforcing. That's where the question is. So it's important that we all become aggressive and do a lot of surveillance, because we have a country to protect. We have an image to protect, and we have a population to feed. What we need to do is to ensure that the current existing regulations, first of all, are enforced fullest. And there are agencies that are already enforcing them. So what we need to do is to give those agencies, put them on pressure, and also be able to hold them accountable of whether they are really following the regulation that they need to do and whether the players within the value chain are acting. In terms of the recent discussion about the Food and Drug Agency that the government is proposing, we have a contrary opinion that other than look like we're going to form another agency for now, we will look at a scenario where can we strengthen the existing agencies and look at whether there's a gap first of all. But in terms of regulation, we have them. The goodwill in terms of unpackaging the regulation and putting them out there is the biggest task that we have as a country to ensure that enforcement is actually done to the letter.
Okay, are there forums that these particular traders can attend to ensure that in terms of sensitization, in terms of even following the regulations that are put in place, they can be well equipped when it comes to actually carrying out their trade and they can actually compete fairly with other countries?
Sarah, forums are there. Question is, who are we targeting the forums? We can do better. What we have done for long is concentrate so much on export-oriented products, which is only amounting to close to 5% of what we produce as a country. The 95% is not fully, the sensitization in that level is not as aggressive as we've done with the export market. Why? Because the export market has put on us a specific requirements that we must meet as a country for us to be able to export to their destination. It's then incumbent of us as a country, and particularly the middle class and the consumers, to be able to start asking and demanding certain standards, even when we go to the supermarkets and groceries. For that reason, there will be a ripple effect that will then push the traders to be able to go down. But in terms of how much we've done what we've done, but there's much more we can do, and this calls for a lot of partnership between us, national government and county governments where agriculture actually takes place. And it's also critical that the traders that are in, for example, call it in Nairobi, traders in the fresh produce market, Makulima market and the groceries, to be involved and to come out clearly. So there's a lot that needs to be done. There's a lot that have been done, but there's much more that needs to be done, particularly when it comes to coordination among us in putting together all our energies to ensure that we get out this.
Okay, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon and talking about the export market. And he's been able to highlight what can be done, especially when it comes to the export market. Now, let's look at how the shilling is performing against other major currencies, and we want to see the performance of the shilling against other major currencies. We want to see how the dollar is performing against other major currencies, and we begin with the US dollar. Now the US dollar is at 103.76 cents, which is buying, and selling at 103.96 cents. Now the sterling pound is at 128.56 cents. It's buying and selling at 128.85 cents, selling. The euro is buying at 114.01 cents and selling at 114.27 cents. Now the rand is at 6 shillings and 92 cents, buying and selling at 6 shillings and 94 cents. Now the Tanzanian shilling is selling at 22.21 cents and buying at 22.07 cents, and the Ugandan shilling is buying at 35 shillings and 30 cents and selling at 35.46 cents. And that is how the forex is looking like. And that's how we wrap up Inside Business, the last word in business. My name is Sarah Adam. Up next is Newscast with Shiksha Arora.